Diamondlot, The Diamond Squad. By Eric Waugh. Chapter 21. Truth. While the knight and the witch battled against each other, there was an audience watching. They were separated into two groups, one supporting Gia the witch and the other supporting Zaid. On Gia's side was the small group of Grecs from earlier. Then there were just the two cheering for Zaid, Nathan and Lilu. The two sides kept their distance from each other while they cheered for their fighter. Despite being beaten in numbers, Nathan screaming at the top of his lungs, cheering for Zaid, while Lilu would flutter around happily. As Nathan got more excited, the Grecs on the other side grew competitive and began shouting back in retaliation. But the real conflict was happening on the battlefield between the Speed Knight and the Witch Prodigy. Gia could cast spells without saying the full incantation. She could conjure poison darts, transform objects around her into sharp weapons, and even levitate large stones. Although Zaid didn't have a versatile arsenal, his armor was able to shield him from the ill effects of the poison darts, and his mount was plenty fast, allowing him to avoid all the other attacks. In between their fight, Zaid accused the witch of turning the poor turtles into the Grecs. Gia had no idea what Zaid was speaking about. They re-engaged in battle, fighting with all their might, but as the conflict dragged on, Zaid was beginning to doubt. Gia's words and actions weren't matching up. Although she was fighting to defeat him, he couldn't sense any malicious intent within her. He was wondering if she was the person responsible for the dreaded curse on Turtle Isle. As Zaid was lost in thought, Gia sensed her chance to strike. She cast a hex spell that struck Zaid's horse, turning it into a tiny frog. Without his steed, Zaid took a tumble onto the ground and he tried to pull himself back up. But Gia wouldn't give her opponent any chance to recover. She followed up her hex magic with a binding spell that had Zaid immobilized. Nathan's jaw dropped in disbelief as he looked at the group of Grecs that were jumping in celebration and mocking him. Gia walked up to Zaid, who was on the ground defeated. She held out her hand that was infused with energy, but Zaid saw her hesitation, so he provoked her further.
Silence. I don't need you to tell me what to do. I will show you how powerful I am.
Nathan couldn't watch as the energy pulse came spiraling towards the defenseless knight. However, the attack landed just a few inches away from Zaid's face. The witch fell to her knees with tears flowing from her eyes.
Why? If I could just hit you, then I would be the greatest and the whole world would know who I am. So why can't I do it?
Zaid reasoned that deep down Gia was not that kind of person. He saw through her hardened heart, and slowly, the witch began to reveal a bit about her past that she tried to forget. Back when the Turtle Owl was still prospering, Gia lived with her family, her parents, older brother, and younger sister. They all lived together alongside the small community of the island until one day the entire land began to shake. Emerging out of the sea was a giant monstrous creature that resembled a sea snake. The beast's hunger was insatiable as it cleared out the entire human populace, leaving behind only one survivor, Gia. With a measly child left, the Leviathan began setting his eyes on the turtles. After devouring nearly 80% of the turtles, Gia's heart could no longer take the horror. A power that lay dormant within her began to surface, which allowed her to save the turtles. She cast a spell that transformed the turtles into Grecs, which deterred the colossal giant from eating them. Because of Gia's efforts, the remaining turtles were saved, but the spell was irreversible. Having lost all its food, the Leviathan disappeared and was never seen on the island again. Ever since then, Gia thought she was the sole human survivor of Turtle Isle. After sharing her story, Gia released Zaid from her binding spell. He got up and held out his hand, offering to Gia, who was shocked by the kind gesture. He apologized to the witch for how he treated her earlier. He didn't realize how much she had to endure. He could relate as for so long, he too thought he was alone on the island. The walls that Gia had built were still strong, but because of Zaid's kind words, they were beginning to crumble. She slowly raised her hands to accept Zaid's help. Off to the side were Nathan and the four Grecs, still watching the events transpire. They were all starting to tear up over this wonderful new friendship. However, before their hands could make contact, a dark bolt shot past Gia and struck near Zaid's chest. Nathan and the Grecs were filled with disbelief as they saw the horrendous scene happen before their eyes. Thankfully, Gia managed to use her powers to catch Zaid, preventing him from falling on his head. She slowly put him down before turning around to find the one responsible for hurting Zaid. It was a dark figure holding a skull staff.